resistance is necessary, and it's a right of the Palestinian people. It is actually it's an enumerated right. I said you could look it up. I don't have to even explain it to you.
Yep.
It's an enumerated right of the Palestinian people to resist oppressor and settler colonialism.
Hey everyone, this is Akshi, one of the co-hosts of Unpacking the Eerie. You are about to listen to the second part of the Palestine Roundtable. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, I suggest that you go back and do that first. In this episode, our lovely guests, Michlin, Battuul, Muhamed, Firas, and Vinny, will cover even more ground, including, but not limited to, personal experiences they've had living through aggressions in Palestine and encountering the Israeli occupation force, the U.S.'s complicity in Israel's brutality, and also in the mutual respect between religions that has existed for centuries before the occupation began. I know that I've been able to learn so much from listening to these wonderful, insightful folks share their experiences and perspectives. And in the next month, Shayna and I will have the opportunity to unpack some of these topics further in Q&As. So keep a lookout for those episodes coming soon. This episode was recorded in December 2023. And with that, here is the episode.
Guys, I was having a struggle trying to pronounce Sharon's first name. His fucking name is like Ariel or Ariel something. I was like, what the fuck, is that a mermaid name? Anywho, on a less positive note, Sharon went in and stormed the Masjid al-Aqsa, which is one of the holy sites for Muslims, and he had, I think, 1,000 soldiers with him, and that kind of sparked the Intifada, the second Intifada, at least for Palestinians in
2000.
Yeah, in 2000.
Intifadat al-Hijara. I mean, those days, that's when Muhamed al-Durra, right, was martyred. And that, I think, is seared into every Arab person's
in our brains.
memory.
Yeah.
Like the way they executed this young boy with his father. His father survived.
Holding him.
Yeah, protecting him and shielding him. And on live TV, right? And if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember 100%, like, you know, but if I'm not mistaken, the person who actually filmed it was fired. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was like French TV. Yeah, this I learned later on, like, you know, but I'm just like,
it didn't do them good, propaganda-wise.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely, you know, executing a boy, like, and now they graduated into, you know, assassinating by mass. You know, masses, entire neighborhoods being wiped out in real time on our phones, you know? When I think about like even like the first they say the first terror attack that was televised, it was like the King David attacked by the Irgun and the Haganah, who are the origins of the IOF, the Israeli occupation forces of the Zionist regime, the army of the Zionist regime. You know, that's how intifadas are sparked, right? It's usually triggered by a deeply invasive operation, you know, maneuver. And then, like, we're like, okay, fighting back to protect what's left, right? To protect ourselves from this, right? And then you hear this cliche, like, it's not cliche, it's a propaganda line that is constantly repeated because it's a lie. They have to repeat it even more times to try to make it, you know, to manufacture consent and to manufacture truth out of it, that Israel has the right to defend itself. And I'm like, Habibi, no, it's in the international law that you so claim to respect and adhere to. And, you know, Switzerland, so humane Switzerland, you know, with the Red Cross, that is, you know, people in Gaza are saying that this agency, a lot of these international agencies that are supposed to be humanitarian, can't even let in a bottle of water, you know, get into Gaza, and they're complicit. They're complicit. They're the ones who are they're protecting the Zionists and, like, you know, helping the hostages. But when it comes to the Palestinian, where were they when the Palestinian prisoners were released?
Did you see how they sent in toys that looked like meals?
Yeah.
Exactly, UNICEF.
It wasn't
fucking
even
UNICEF.
Yeah, these kids are starving, and they're giving them toys that look like burger meals and stuff. I'm like, what the fuck? But going back to Muhamed Durra, his dad is still alive.
Yeah.
And he actually suffered a great loss right now in Gaza. I don't know if it was
Siblings
his
were
other
martyred.
two sons or his siblings. Okay, yeah.
Siblings
He,
that were martyred in Gaza
two
were
of his brothers were killed the same way. And imagine being in his shoes. I just don't think any one of us here can even comprehend being close to that situation.
And the audacity, I mean, we were talking about projection, how they always project what they do. When Muhammad was killed, they said it was, he was killed by Palestinian fire. When Shireen Abu Akleh was murdered, they said it was Palestinian fire. When these children are dying, they're saying it's rockets firing back.
Exactly.
This projection. It's vile, it's disgusting, and it has to be repeated time and time again. Like you said, to manufacture some sort of truth, some sort of false.
How many times did they spread the beheaded babies? Who lied about that? Who said that they saw pictures of it? Wasn't it the fucking Genocide Joe who went on TV to say he saw photos of it?
Yeah.
And it wasn't real, nothing. We know already that it was like, but the lie traveled.
I think it's also wild how on our end, videos, pictures of demolished houses and everything, there's proof from, you can go back to the start of everything, and none of it is legitimized. But if one white man gets up and says, oh no, I saw that, the whole country, I remember at my work, we got an email from a CEO saying, our hearts stand out with Israel.
Oh boy.
Right after October 7th. And I'm like, what the fuck, bro? Like, it's been one day.
The performativity of it all.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, the theater of it all. Like, everything out here is a theater, like they have,
It's a farce. It's a fucking farce. Like, this is not real.
Yeah. I mean, they have to, like, they have to make their comic books, of superheroes. They have to make their TV shows, with 300 guy. What's his name? Jared Butler, who raised money for the IOF. Like that film. It wasn't, and it came out like shortly, like in 2006, I think, after the invasion of Iraq, and after they occupied Iraq, and after they invaded, Afghanistan. After again manufacturing this whole quote unquote war on terror, right? I mean,
and that's why I think the Palestinian resistance has really exposed the West for what it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
It exposed it in a way that is indefensible when we are witnessing a blatant genocide, and there's no question that what we're witnessing is a genocide against colonized people. And then you have the so-called United States defending these atrocities. And then the American people are asking themselves, a lot of them are asking themselves, why is this happening? Why is our government doing this? Why is our government protecting and supporting and funding what is a blatant genocide? People are actually asking questions that they might have just ignored or contemplated briefly and didn't think about as much. And asking those questions has really exposed a lot of things, because it becomes very clear that the Zionist entity is really just an extension of American imperialism.
100%.
It is just another colony for them. It had its reasons during the Cold War era, and to try to reduce the spread of communism in that region, and to have basically a watchdog for the United States and the West, and to just be able to monitor that area and control it. And of course, these reasons have evolved, and there's more to it now than just stopping the spread of communism. And it's just about having a watchdog, stealing the resources, having, basically a massive military base for themselves in the region, among the other military bases that exist in other parts in West Asia, places like, for example, like Jordan, or in southern Syria, where the United States still maintains American bases. That for them, that's really the goal, is to geopolitical.
And I think a lot of it has to do with current time imperialism. So when it comes to the past, it was okay to explore because it was a lot of quote unquote unknown land, because they weren't out there. But now they want a method of controlling the Middle East and controlling the Suez Canal, and Israel is the way to do so. They have like an in basically on the land. This will never restore Arab sovereignty. This is never going to allow for an Arab united body, because they have an infiltrator in there that's affecting that control. And a lot of it too comes with the divisions between religions in that area. And I know Michlin can talk about like the church bombings after everything that happened after the Intifada.
First, I want to say my cousin used to say, still says, that Israel is bint America المدللة. So, meaning Israel is the spoiled daughter of the U.S., like the only child. But going back to like the second Intifada, I was 10 years old when it happened, and I remember to this day when it happens, and all the operations and all of these things. And I remember the siege. I remember my mom and my dad left to the U.S. because financially things were really, the siege was happening, so everything was shut down. And I remember my mom and I would actually go out during the siege to go to my aunt's house because it was just my mom and I. And then we would go through like one of the main roads to like Beit Jala. And I remember one time as we were crossing, we saw a big tank, like, I don't know, a few feet away. And then the missile was directed towards us. And like, I remember my mom booking it, like the back way, the back roads. But during the 40-day, one of the siege that happened, there was the 40-day siege, and it was after Bethlehem was like basically got revamped. They fixed the roads, they fixed the street lights, they painted all of the fronts of the stores because it's 2000. The year 2000 of Bethlehem, and they even remodeled the Nativity Church where Jesus was born, since Jesus is Palestinian. A lot of the people from the resistance were hiding there, and in terms of the whole they divide and conquer, the priests and the nuns were keeping the resistance 100%. Safe. And I remember my uncle, he got pulled by the IOF a couple times because he was trying to sneak in food to the church because he's also a priest. He was trying to sneak in food to the church, but they like held him at gunpoint a few times. Yeah, and that was wild. I remember seeing the sound bombs and the light bombs.
As a 10-year-old.
As a 10-year-old. From my house. I remember my mom and I would turn off all the lights so they won't come in or see us or anything like that. And the Nativity Church was like, we could see it from our window. And I remember watching like the sound bombs and the light bombs falling on the church. And that was just like, that was wild to see. And I don't think I, as a kid, registered what was happening. But seeing that with my mom, it was just my mom and I seeing it. And I remember like it was just like it was yesterday, like seeing the bombs falling. And
it's not something you can unsee.
No. And I remember like they ruined the church, like the space, the buildings, everything was ruined from all the bombs.
It's so ironic because they are there in this land because God promised it. Do you really think God is approving of you bombing these masajid, these churches?
And they don't think that because they're not religious. They're atheists. They hijacked the Jewish faith. They hijacked our brother's religion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Exactly.
And then they continued to divide and conquer. They tried to divide Christians and Muslims in Bethlehem, I remember. And they would even like sometimes give special treatment for Christians to give them the permanent, the tasriyah, to go to Jerusalem, to visit the Aqsa, to visit the Holy Sepulchre Church, And then they would refuse and limit the Muslim men and women and everybody to cross, to go and pray.
That happened to
I know
me,
my Sido, like they give usually the tasrih for Muslims if you're above like 70,
above a certain age, and even my cousins, the young men in the family, they give them hard time to give them the tasrih to go to Jerusalem.
I mean, for now, like ever since the genocide, this latest round of genocide began against Gaza, Al-Aqsa has been closed to the Palestinians, except for those above 70. But on the other hand, all of the settler colonizers from Long Island, from Poland,
from Brooklyn,
from Brooklyn, from Long Beach, they get to.
They walk in.
Exactly. It's as though it's like their land, And what Vinny said, about Zionism hijacking and weaponizing Judaism. Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism, and the biggest proof is that there are so many Jewish people. We know them well. We see them. We go together. We do a lot of work together, real liberation work together, because they know that their path to freedom is intertwined with our liberation, right? Like they know that they need to free their own people from the shackles of Zionism, because Zionism is a doctrine that upholds white supremacy that originated in Switzerland, in Europe, in Germany, in Austria, right? And then like just to use it as a justification to occupy Palestine at the order of, you know, the UK through the Balfour Declaration, cutting up Palestine and the Arab world and Africa and Asia, you know, through Sykes-Picot, right, in 1917. And now, you know, passing on the baton when, you know, the British Empire was like, quote unquote, waning, like the influence of it, passing the baton onto like the new empire, the US, right? And it's, so where does Judaism fit into all of this? I don't feel, it doesn't feel very Jewish to me, you know? The same way it doesn't feel very Christian to me to be celebrating Christmas, you know, when the patriarch, the Latin patriarch in Jerusalem, you know, said effectively
Christmas isn't celebrated.
Exactly. I mean, how could you, like, when
How can you celebrate and give gifts to children when children are dying somewhere else?
in
For the
Gaza.
birth of Jesus.
Well, not like you're 100%. You're right, but more onto your point. Like they're literally exterminating all of the Christians in Gaza.
Yeah.
You know, it's the third oldest church that was like wiped off.
And then when Notre Dame got set on fire, the whole world stopped, and everybody, and like let's raise funds, let's raise money. Why? It's not that. I mean, yes, it's old, but
it's only a monument.
Yes.
There were people living in there.
Exactly. And it's because it's in Europe and all of these things. But then we have our churches that have been there for
Real churches
that have been there for over 2,000 years, longer than that. They get bombed, they get bulldozed, and then nothing happens. We don't say anything, you know? And
So there's a fabrication once again of the divisions between the faiths in Palestine. Palestine has always been a place where Christians, Muslims, and Jews lived together in peace. It really wasn't until that Balfour Declaration and the influx of Eastern European Jews into that area that became the waters became murked up, if you will. I mean, as a Palestinian Christian, I'm indebted to my Muslim brothers. Every Christian needs to know when they pray to Jesus Christ in the morning, they have to thank their Muslim brothers and sisters who hold the key to the sepulchre church. They're the defenders of Christ's tomb. The defenders of Christ's tomb are a Muslim family of the Salah ad-Din bloodline. This is our history. When Al-Aqsa was founded, it was founded upon mutual respect of religions, because the leaders that were gonna go pray at Jesus' tomb, they made the decision, if I pray here, I know my following will turn this church into a mosque. Therefore, I'm going to pick this rock up. I'm going to throw it as far as I can. And where that rock landed, that's where those leaders, they turned and they prayed to Christ. They prayed for him. And that's where Al-Aqsa was built, on that faith, you know?
I think it's also important, even now with the demolished masajid, the mosques, and the kana'is and the knisa. There was a video I remember seeing so vividly that says, it was by a priest, and they were like, my dear Muslims, if they demolish your mosques, and you no longer can hold the adhan, we will hold your adhan from our churches. And that just shows you what Vinny was just saying. It's within every Palestinian.
He even said, if there is no one alive to do that, I will use my voice and I will lead the prayer.
Didn't we see the same thing in the Egyptian revolution? Didn't we see like, you know, that the Muslims would be praying, and it was our Christian siblings that were protecting the Muslims in Egypt during the revolution from the military and the police. You know, back then it was Mubarak, you know, before they installed Sisi, right?
The Christianity that's in the West is definitely very different than the Christianity that we have back home, because you know I attended you know in my case a Catholic school, and growing up in Jordan to Palestinian family that was displaced in 48. Being Catholic and Christian is really for the most part seen as one and the same, you know, growing up in that region. And And one of the things that you see is that it really is truly very different than the Christianity that you see over here. The Christianity in the West, the Protestant Christianity is really rooted in capitalism. Even the sociologist whose name is Max Weber wrote about this in a publication called The Protestant Ethic in the Spirit of Capitalism, in which he basically argues that the rise of capitalism was actually a product of Calvinist Protestantism that believed in individuality, which we still see this Protestant ethic in every facet of this, of this so-called United States, in which we see it in the politics, we see it in education, we see it even in this myth of pull yourself up with your own bootstraps. The idea of individualism is rooted in Western Christianity. Compared to the Christianity that I grew up around, the schools that I attended, my friends that were Christian, my neighbors that were Christian, that were more about community and less about this individualistic, materialistic aspect that is rooted in Western Christianity.
بعد the second intifada, after the second intifada, in 2007, Sharon did end up kind of going through it a little bit, and then he he went into a vegetative state, right?
Yeah. So he spent the last 8 years of his life in a vegetative state, basically in a coma. I hope he was trapped with his own thoughts, because this is the same guy that did Sabra and Shatila massacre in 1982 during the war in Lebanon, basically. He was the general then, and massacred, how many people was it? 3,000 people in the refugee camp in Lebanon. Meanwhile, the Israelis were basically keeping guard, and the phalangists in Lebanon were carrying out the massacre. So, I mean, he was facilitating it and directing it, perhaps, because we know that the source of basically every kind of misery, every kind of war, trace it back to Israel. Whether it's like the Bosnian genocide, whether it's the Rwandan genocide, whether it's like the genocide of Rohingya in Myanmar, Burma, in Sudan right now, whether it's the Congo, and we look into like the blood diamonds. Israel, you trace back every single, and we're not even talking about like Pegasus, the software, and like how Israel destabilizes nations entirely through disinformation campaigns in political, in politics, basically. Like, it's not a coincidence that in Argentina, fascism got voted in. Like, there are institutes, right? Zionist institutes. For example, the Holocaust Memorial is one of them, where they're like, feigning like care for like the Bosnian genocide after it happens, right? After it's like pleaded, quote unquote, they feign like all of this care and everything, but at the same time, like, they're carrying out a genocide, an active genocide in Palestine.
It's just accepted.
Yeah, I mean, as though they're the moral authority.
I had a thought. Speaking of the division of land, Palestine, the way that we knew it to be, was the entirety of the land. And then after the British did their thing, quote unquote Jewish people, the land that they gave them initially has never been the land that's kept today. So when it comes to talking about what are the Palestinian territories that are officially recognized, that's not the same Palestinian territories that were officially recognized a few years back. Or a few years before that. So it's been changing, the annexation has been happening, and you see resistant movements within the Palestinian territories itself, and you should ask yourself, why is there resistance within a Palestinian territory? Shouldn't they be like accepting at least of the territory they're given? But they're not actually given that. There's always checkpoints, there's always something. And I know, Michlin, you can talk about Jenin a little bit if you'd like, or Bethlehem and Nablus and their resistance coming out of them.
Yeah, I can talk about Bethlehem since I grew up there. In terms of checkpoints, there's always checkpoints. Even going to Jerusalem, I had to go through multiple checkpoints. If we had to go not through the checkpoints, we had to go through what we call it Wadi Nar, which is like the Valley of Fire. So a lot of accidents would happen by Wadi Nar, and that was the back road that we would take to avoid the checkpoints. But talking a little bit more about the checkpoints, in 2002, the separation wall was built because the resistance were doing a lot of operations there, and they built that wall to quote unquote reduce those operations. And with that separation wall, there was a lot more checkpoints. There's even like laser or like automatic guns on top of the separation wall. To even cross the separation wall, like you have to go through like they're metal, and then it's like almost like
It's even like a maze.
Yeah, it's like a maze. You have to go through like so many different things. And then the IUF will humiliate the people. They make them wait for hours. And something that when I went back home in 2014 for the first time since I moved out of Bethlehem, that was the first time seeing the separation wall. I mean, when I was there was no separation wall. Yeah. And then going back, I saw it for the first time, and I remember just like having just like this weird feeling in my chest, seeing it for the first time and crossing through it. And then since I have the U.S. citizenship, going through that separation wall was a little different experience. Because I had, the so-called U.S. passport, I didn't have to go through the checkpoints. I would be able to drive through the checkpoints because I did not have to stop, which is an apartheid. And this is how they, a lot of, again, separate and divide. So I remember seeing, our people like having to wait in line and like for hours to get through, to cross the separation wall, to go to Jerusalem. And then that separation wall is illegal.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It's illegal. It separated people from their lands. It even there's this house, I think, in Bethlehem that is surrounded by the separation wall from on the three sides.
Yeah.
So it's this house. The people that live in that house, they have to go through the multiple checkpoints to go from their house out of their home. And then Firas said that the separation wall was built by Semtex, and it's the same company that built the border wall in here, separating Mexico and the U.S.
Yep, it's a Mexican company.
And it's a Mexican company.
That's
so
ironic.
That's wild.
Well, I mean, Mexico is a settler colony as well. Like, it's not just U.S., it's Canada, it's Mexico. I mean, so much of the world is removed from our origins by design.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out that we have this imagery, at least I think in the minds of a lot of people, that settler colonialism is only perpetrated by white people. And I think we need to move past that idea that settler colonialism is just inflicted or imposed or created just by white people. While yes, a lot of white folks have been involved in settler colonialism, we also have to remember that there are a lot of settlers in Palestine and other than Palestine are actually of Arab origins.
There you go.
And it's important to remember that they try to create all these ethnic identities, which are all socially constructed, in a way that tries to create an image of proximity to Palestinians that are indigenous people that are colonized. These settlers settlers from a lot of them from Arab origins, like places like the Maghreb or Iraq. They themselves perpetuate a lot of oppression. Yes, they do suffer from some level of discrimination from the white settlers, just as even there are black settlers.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That live in Palestine also are discriminated against within the settler colony, but they themselves, at the end of the day, are also still settlers, and they themselves are displacing Palestinians. They're displacing the indigenous people, and they're stealing their land, and they're
the most brutal.
They're brutal.
Like, because they speak Arabic, they're put on the front lines against Palestinians. We see it so clearly in Al-Quds, in Jerusalem, occupied Jerusalem, where like a lot of these settlers of color, if you will, and they go hardest against Palestinians, first because they need to prove their allegiance to the Zionist project, more Zionists than the Zionists themselves, like just to underscore how, white supremacy is that underneath it all, and how you could be a person of color, as we were saying earlier, and still uphold white supremacy, right? Like, you could be a foot soldier for white supremacy. Ben Ghafir, is of Iraqi origin. He whitewashed himself to appear to be more, Hebrew, but in reality, like, he is, we know how a lot of the intelligence units are of the Mustarabin, the Arabized, or the Arabizers, who masquerade. They try to dress like Palestinians because they speak the language. They try to blend in among Palestinians, but then they ambush Palestinians and abduct Palestinians and feed the prison industrial complex in Palestine, in occupied Palestine.
Going off of what Michlin talked about internal resistance within the West Bank, I think, Vinny, you can really talk about Nablus and Sheikh Jarrah as of recently, actually, too. Yeah.
Definitely. So, yeah, definitely before I get into resistance and the current pulse on the resistance, I do want to underscore that I hold my enemy to no moral standard. I literally hold those who are actually coming onto my land to take my home, to take my grandfather, to uproot my family from their home, to humiliate them, to drag them, to kill them. I don't hold that person or those who support that person to any moral standard. That being said, resistance is necessary, and it's a right of the Palestinian people. It is actually it's an enumerated right. I said you could look it up. I don't have to even explain it to you.
Yep.
It's an enumerated right of the Palestinian people to resist oppressor and settler colonialism. Full stop. Full stop on that one. With that being said, there's a current pulse of the resistance, and it's beating. And with what we're seeing within the West Bank earlier this year to what we're seeing now in Gaza. So what we saw in the West Bank is the resistance rising up out of a sheer necessity to protect the homes that they live in. The people, the resistance in Jenin started to protect that camp, the city of Jenin. These are actual men of this community who decided that they have no other choice but to take up arms to defend every square inch of their community. Everybody has a community. Everybody lives in a neighborhood or a surrounding place. Imagine if you actually had to survey and make sure that place was not taken and your family was not uprooted and people did not live in your house fully furnished and kick you out and live and sleep on the same mattress that they didn't even change the drapes. They didn't even change the drapes on the windows.
Yeah, people's breakfast was on the table.
People's breakfasts were on the table
finished
when
the
they
tea.
walked in. They finished the cup of tea. They sat down. أخذوها مفروشة. They took it. They took it fully furnished. So what we were seeing in Nablus, what we're seeing in Jenin, what we're seeing in Sheikh Jarrah in Jerusalem, one of the most holy sites in the world, where Jesus Christ himself was crucified, Jesus Christ who was born in Bethlehem, Jesus Christ whom we celebrate the season of Christmas, Christ Mass. So this is a right of each man, of each woman even. There are women taking up arms. There are women taking up arms alongside men. How progressive, how advanced are we as a people that everyone who is willing, fighting, and able will do that. And that's what we're seeing in the West Bank, although they're very limited. What are their arsenal in the West Bank is we're talking small arms. We're talking small arms and improvised devices that are homemade. But the resistance is thriving and their communities still stand. Imagine living, this is the scenario in Sheikh Jarrah. You're living in your family's home that was built by you. Built by you. Meaning you own it, meaning you don't rent it. And then you receive a notice saying that you're being evicted for rent not due or whatever the case of the trumped up charge is. A house that your grandfather built that you're being evicted from. That is the situation we're seeing in Jerusalem. One of the holiest sites in the world. That is the situation.
And there's a connective tissue between Sheikh Jarrah and Gaza, because both of them were exiled from Jaffa, right? From 48 land that you were saying, Vinny. Like there are some that stayed, and those are the third class citizens in so-called Israel in the entity. But then like you have Gaza, people from Lid who were exiled from Lid, from Haifa, from Jaffa, from Ramle, and same thing with Sheikh Jarrah. So like tell us, Vinny, about like how Gaza, the people in Gaza are the freest of people in the world. And we're seeing Yemen now, right? Like, who's a sovereign nation? Yemen, the one sovereign nation, you know, that stood up to
they're exercising liberty.
to the bullying. Yeah,
They're exercising freedom. They're exercising liberation, self-determination. They're saying our brothers in Yemen are saying, you know how I could cry right now because the people of Yemen, how they are suffering.
yeah.
How these children are suffering.
They went through the same thing.
Their
as
bone,
Gaza.
their skin and bone.
Related. They saw themselves in Gaza because the same thing happened to them over the past 10 years when Saudi was bombing them with the full and UAE with the full support of the US, of course.
With American weapons.
The menace of the world, you know. Like the U.S. is a menace to the world. We have to be honest. Like
you know, I grew up in Jordan, Palestinian family. Hearing my mom and my dad often describing the United States, the so-called United States, as they would say in Arabic, "Ras al-Hayya," which translates into the head of the snake. And I heard this ever since I was a little child, and now as an adult, these two words, "Ras al-Hayya," the head of the snake, couldn't be any closer to the truth. Because at the end of the day, the common denominator is that the bombs dropped are coming out of here. The financial support, the training, all of it. The American imperialism has really spread its tentacles everywhere. And it really is the core of all of these problems.
Because it's everywhere. You could strike it from anywhere.
Exactly.
Right?
Like Hassan Kanafani said, you strike it anywhere in the world, you're doing the world a favor. You're helping, you're contributing to the liberation of the world. And that's even Hassan Kanafani, I think, is the one that mentioned how he's envious of the Palestinians that live in the belly of the beast. Because we have a unique opportunity over here to really strike the in the belly of the beast, as opposed to striking the tentacles of this beast.
Che Guevara made similar commentary on that.
There's a story about a black organizer, I believe, or a scholar that went on an eyewitness intentional visit to Palestine, and I believe that went into Gaza. And when she asked like people in Gaza, what can I do in the U.S.? How can I help you achieve liberty? And what the Hajj said, the old matriarch in Gaza said, is go achieve your own liberty. Fight for your own liberty as a black person in the U.S. That is what will help us as people in Gaza languishing under
enemy.
Exactly, because our that shows like we need to move past allyship, past solidarity. Body. Exactly. We need to be accomplices. Our destinies, we need to realize that our destinies are enjoined. We have to understand this. We have to have a solid power analysis. Like
exactly.
You said,
and all of that requires sacrifices. And honestly, this is kind of a key thing that I personally struggle with. I think a lot of, if I'm just going to make this just a tiny bit personal here, I think a lot of the depression and anxiety and sadness that I experience, I often find that it's because of a gap between my values and what I'm really contributing. Where I feel like no matter what I do is never enough. Because I have these values that are I believe my values are towards liberation, and I never feel like I'm doing enough, especially when I look towards Palestine. I see these Palestinian children throwing rocks, fully knowing that they could go to jail, and many of them do, that they will be imprisoned, they will be taken hostages by the Israeli occupation, knowing that they will be going to jail for literally 10 years plus at times for throwing rocks. And what do? They still throw rocks. They give zero fucks. Maybe I shouldn't say they give zero fucks. I'm sure they worry about being taken as hostages by the occupation and being put into the occupation prisons for under administrative detention, and then later on for many years afterwards. And here we are. You know, it really makes us feel like no matter what we do is never enough. And that's kind of what I worry about, if you don't mind me kind of going on this little tangent here. I worry about how, you know, what we say and what we do in the West as Palestinians in the diaspora, Palestinians in exile, that sometimes we are turning a lot of things into metaphors and turning our work and our effort into this political process where we go to city councils and then we also, try to get these resolutions passed. And, that's a conversation we really need to address because, first of all, a resolution is exactly that. I think a lot of people might forget that a resolution has no legal power, no legal teeth. But even if for just a second we pretend that a resolution has some legal power, which again, it doesn't, okay? Even if it does, isn't that normalization? Isn't that an attempt to try to resolve or end the occupation and end the imperialist pursuits of the so-called United States? Isn't that normalization to participate in the political process that we're going through their court systems, that we're going through their politicians? Why are we appealing to another settler colony? Why are we appealing to the representatives of a settler colony? And this, yes, includes even the only Palestinian congresswoman, Rashida Tlaib. Because a lot of Palestinians in the diaspora put her on a pedestal. But when we also really look at this objectively, she is a representative of a settler colony.
Absolutely.
And when we are appealing to representatives of settler colony, how can we ever not look at this and see that this is a betrayal of indigenous people here? We want to tie our struggle as Palestinians to indigenous people here only when it's convenient, only when we want to say, oh, look, the land theft looks the same, the ethnic cleansing, the displacement looks the same, the perpetrator is the same, but then we say to our own people, to the Palestinians, the indigenous Palestinians, we tell them don't normalize, don't go to the Knesset, don't participate in the political process.
But this is also part of the liberal agenda that we were talking about.
100%.
They're pretending like they're giving us a voice by putting Rashida there. But did any of them actually listen to anything that she was saying?
No, and
Even censored. Exactly, she got censored. And even what she was saying, it wasn't like the same radical thing that like a Palestinian back home would agree with.
It would be
So
watered down,
like her watered down version of what Palestine needs wasn't even accepted in Congress. So why are we still
It's
upholding
only
this?
doing more harm.
Exactly, it's only legitimizing their words against what she's saying.
And like the incrementalist approach, like people who advocate for these approaches, like they're going after like, oh yeah, we do it like little by little, and like, but when I think about like in the context of just like planet, right? And like when I think about climate change and when I think about like, we don't have time, we don't have much time left.
75 years, little by little, where?
Yeah, exactly.
That's too.
I mean, it's already been too long.
Yeah,
it's already been too long. Like, but what does it mean on a planetary scale, right? Like when we know that the biggest polluter of the planet is actually the U.S. Army.
Yep.
When we know that it's weapons and they just dropped like the equivalent, because this was like halfway through on the 30th or 40th day, the calculation was made. Zionist regime dropped the equivalent of 2 nuclear bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan when the U.S. bombed them just because like, the Japanese launched Pearl Harbor. And again, like that punishment comes in again, right? Like, how are we going to humiliate this entire population and then subjugate them and then so that we could control them? And look where Japan is now, where it really became a settler colony in so many aspects in a way. Obviously, like if we go back in history, like they also, like they colonized Korea, right? Like they actually, subjugated a lot of women in the Philippines and, in Laos and Vietnam, to use them as like sex workers, like for the Japanese military. So we see how all of these dynamics, like Palestine is truly a lens.
So doesn't that actually circle us back to how the reason why they are so heavily bombing Gaza, well, they always do it, they actually have a vernacular for it, meaning they have a common language for genocide. They call
It
it
happens every year.
They call it mowing the lawn.
Oh yeah, oh my
They
God.
call it mowing the lawn. So when our children are growing, they let them give birth to our children. But once they get to the age of 3, 4, 5, then it's time to bomb Gaza. Then it's time to bomb Gaza.
That, it hurt me.
That's what's happening. What the reason for us, we just mentioned it and we talked about it earlier, is That's because Gaza is the most free.
Yes.
Out of all the regions in Palestine, the people of Gaza are the most free.
They're self-governed.
They self-governed, like she just said it. They're
On
self-governed
their land.
on their land. They have their own facilities,
Yeah.
which are being bombed. They have their own infrastructure, which they built, which is being destroyed. They have their own places of worship,
On
which
universities, higher education.
higher education. You know, there's scientists in Gaza that exchange notes and ideas with scientists in Japan. This is common knowledge. This is actually known.
Yeah, and the literacy in Gaza is higher than the U.S.
Oh yeah, of course.
I mean, you have
know?
you have 6-year-olds who are breaking down American politics to its hairline.
Show me an American not child, an American adult that can do half
They
of
can't.
that.
They have.
I saw this one video recently. All the videos are surfacing now, and it was a family fleeing. And the first thing that the mom grabbed was the backpack full of books. She's like, "أنا راح أعلم ولادي. I'm gonna educate my kids. I'm gonna keep them educated in this time." And that just struck me because it's like we really do take a lot of things for granted.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like-
100%.
These people are the free.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and with their freedom, we see the most important value for them. It's qira'a, iqra.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reading.
So my
Yeah.
question, like, just to bring it back to the audiences in the settler colony, what are you going to do? You know, the privileges that you got, all of the privileges that you've hoarded and that we have hoarded and we have accumulated out here. You know, I only use you just because, like, I know that I'm going back, like, you know, to my homeland soon.
True,
But
we
like,
are returning.
yeah, exactly. Like, but you know, what are you willing to do to give up of your privilege that you made on the backs of people in the third world? What are you gonna do to sacrifice some of those privileges just to, like, you know, keep people alive? We're just talking about keeping people alive at this point in Gaza. Like, what are you willing to do? What are you going to do to get in the way of the genocide? What are you going to do to put yourself, right, insert yourself and implicate yourself and the people that you love and that you know to stop this genocide? Because you have that power, right? Like, you have a voice, you have that power, you have a circle, you have friends, you have the resources, you have the knowledge, you know. What are you going to do with it all? Who are you?
And by keeping people alive, we don't mean just the people of Gaza in general. The people dying are not just numbers. They each of them have a family. The family lines are being erased. Names, pages of family lines. So it's important to share specific stories, humanize people of Palestine, because we are human, and our resistance doesn't take away from that humanity.
Yeah, and that's the other thing with how we humanize Palestinians. It seems more recently it's been restricted to women and children.
Yeah.
That's another really important thing, because there's this is also intentional when they're focused on women and children. It's because they don't want to acknowledge men and resistance fighters as part of the people that we should be mourning. As if we should be only mourning women and children. No, we mourn our resistance fighters. We mourn the fighters of Hamas. We mourn the fighters of the PIJ. We mourn the fighters of every resistance group, of the fighters of the PFLP, the fighters of every Palestinian that fought this occupation.
No, it's not okay to mourn our fighters, but it's okay to mourn their fighters, the ones that go back home and kill us.
Yeah, they pick
We
pictures
can
of them
take
with
Veterans
puppies,
Day.
right?
We can have their names plastered on all the fucking walls in every town. That's okay.
Clear. Let us be clear on what we mean by fighters, because what we mean by fighters is the men who live there taking up arms to protect their livelihood and their people. What are we talking about? The fighters of the IOF. We're talking about people who were shipped from Brooklyn 6 months ago and handed military grade weapons. Yeah, you know, 1/5 of the death on the Israelis that right now is due to friendly fire, because you have inexperienced, scared little boys who are being actually just pushed into this war. If they were actually cared about the Jewish people, why are they hoarding them and throwing them at a force that they know has a right to defend themselves, and they know that will do it to the death? Yeah. These men, they've already signed up for death. They've already decided, when I'm taking up arms, I know what is going to occur from this.
The consequences is not something that's surprising to Palestinian resistors, because it's not meaningful to live on a land that's as yours, but you're being told every single day and being fought every single day that it's not.
Yeah.
That's I would love to just underscore our brothers in the 48. We mentioned they're the Palestinians who remained on their land, and they're actually surrounded by the enemy at all times, at all hours of the day, at school, wherever they are, the enemy is watching them. My cousin, we were going to get ice cream, and I have a ring, and it has the Palestinian flag on it, and I was taking a good amount of my ice cream. He saw the ring. He's like, "You're wearing that? Why you can't wear it." I'm like, "What do you mean? Why?" The Khaifin? No, they're not Khaifin, but they know the consequences. They're not scared, but they understand that this flag in those territories is actually a symbol of resistance. Our very existence is resistance. It's seen as violent to them because we exist. We're there. The same way that the dirt is on the ground and the roots are in the soil, that is the Palestinian people. And they know that and they fear that. I was walking in the streets of Jerusalem after going to the Holy Sepulchre Church where Christ was tombed, where he rose from ascension to this. He literally rose to ascension, the point from which he rose to ascension. I leave that, and the only place I want to go is Al-Aqsa. I want to go see Al-Aqsa now. I saw where Christ was. I want to go see Al-Aqsa. And who directed me there? A beautiful auntie. She was Muslim. Because I was like, when Al-Aqsa, she said, go here and go here. So what do? I'm turning the blocks, the beautiful cobblestone of Jerusalem. And who stops me? We have 6 Israeli police, but they're militant. They're have more iron on them than they have clothing. They have 2 clips in every gun. And they see I'm wearing my t-shirt from Berzet Society. And it has a beautiful olive tree on the back, and they stopped me. I didn't know they stopped me. My cousin stopped me. He's like, "Hey, bro, they're calling us." And then I'm going to Al-Aqsa. I'm on a mission.
Vinny Dahil, yeah.
I'm know where I'm going. I know where I'm walking. I'm walking where I'm from. I'm going to Al-Aqsa. That's where I'm at.
As you should.
You know?
Yeah.
Because it was like, "Hey, bro, I'm walking." So he's like, "Where are you going?" That's what he says. "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I'm going to Al-Aqsa." He's like, "Where are you from?" "Where are you from?" I'm like, "Why do you want to ask me where I'm from? What does that matter?" He's like, "Are you Muslim?"
Oh boy.
He asked me if I'm Muslim. To which I say, once again, why is that a matter? What? He's like, he tells me this place is only for Muslims.
Wow.
You can't go there. You're not a
A
Muslim.
Zionist is gatekeeping our
Religion.
And didn't
our
I
own siblings.
tell you earlier how the key to the Holy Sepulchre Church is held by a Muslim family. The trust, the love between them. The fact of the matter is, I know that the Imam would never tell me, "Ya ibni, you can't come here because you're Christian." He would never do that. That's, my tata said, I went to Al-Aqsa and I prayed Salatna. I prayed Al-Masbah, Salat al-Rabb. She literally did that. In Al-Aqsa, because why? It's a place of God. It's a house of God. It's a holy site. And I was barred from that as a Palestinian Christian from being close to my Muslim. How much closer would I have felt to my Muslim brothers had I said, "I've been to Al-Aqsa. I've seen what you've seen. I worshipped where you've worshipped."
Well, they want to cut us off from each other. The same way they cut us off from our own selves, from our own land. They want to cut us off from each other too. How many social networks have they destroyed by creating this false occupation? How many, millennia of lineages were cut off from the land, from accessing the land, right? Due to this occupation, cutting us off from each other, from our own towns, from our elders.
So I think it's important to now talk about how we can not give them that power. How do we take away the power from the colonizer and the imperialist state and keep it in our hands? So how do we as Palestinians and all the allies and our brothers and sisters also in fight for liberation and struggle for liberation, how do we come together as a collective and come to action? And I think that comes through many means. It comes through education, having teach-ins, talking with people and spreading the right word, informing people, sharing stories of real people. I think it's it comes differently in the types of spaces that you're in. But I think it is important to keep that call to action in mind when you do anything in life, because this is not something that Palestinians can turn off and on like a light switch. It's a reality. So we can't do that. We can't hold that privilege of not thinking about it on a daily basis. And that comes with any struggle. Native Americans in the US and Canada, they're still going through the struggles today.
100%.
African Americans and black folks here in the US are under struggle on the daily.
Absolutely.
BLM movements are still ongoing.
Public enemy number one.
Exactly.
Public enemy number one.
Yeah. So how do we? This is a question for all of us right now. So just keep thinking. How do we call to action?
I think each one of us is uniquely qualified. When I speak at the, each one of us, like when we said earlier, the revolution starts from within. Each one of us is uniquely qualified to do a specific action according to their best of abilities, according to their experience, lived life experience, to their knowledge, to their inheritance, their positionality, according to their geography, their lineage, their history. Each person is uniquely qualified to do a specific action. I think also, like, we need to flood all of the tactics, employ all of the tactics, all of the strategies when it comes to fighting back and to resisting. And that comes, in the form of like protests, in terms of rallies, in terms of direct action. Like workers in Palestine shared a guide about all of the weapons manufacturers out in the US. Where are they located? What kinds of weapons are they making exactly? How they're killing Palestinians with those weapons, basically. And basically it becomes contingent upon us as people who live in the belly of the beast. How do we collectivize and organize ourselves into putting barriers between us, between those weapons and Palestinians, basically. So we use our own bodies. I think, like,
boycotting is a great way right
100%,
now. Make sure you're spending your money in ethical places. You don't want to be contributing to a genocide, regardless of where it is. I think, and that should be the lowest level of support. So, like, if you can do anything at all, that's the first step that you can even partake in.
Yeah, and I think, like, you don't have to be an organizer. Like, everybody can organize. Everybody's an organizer. Organizing is just about communication, basically. That's how I see it. And carrying a love for the people and carrying a vision for liberation. And people need to talk to each other, and people need to, build those care networks, those, really become integrated into their communities and really, be a member of their communities and really take up responsibility, which I see it as just being responsible and responding to, right?
Adding on to that, I think, like what we said earlier, educating yourself, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Research. We have access to a tiny computer in our hands at all times. We have access to information. Read books. There's a lot of information out there that will, share the knowledge with you. And I'm sure everybody in their circle somehow, one way or another, they're always going to have somebody who is Arab, who possibly be Palestinian. There's always going to be that one person. So
you're going to know it too.
And you're going to know it. They will tell you that they are Palestinian. So ask questions, definitely educate yourself on this.
I mean, Palestinians we have documented our struggle. We have documented our struggle for so long. There are so many writers and authors throughout time, like, on every field, like, whether it's academics, whether it's poetry, whether it's arts, whether it's playwrights, every single discipline, there is a Palestinian there and an Arab working.
On a less serious note, you don't even have to go to literature. Right now, if you have a phone on you and any form of social media, you can see straight videos.
Exactly.
So it's like, if you see that, don't be silent about it. That's not something normal. You shouldn't be able to look at a video of someone being killed and then walk into Disney the next day and, like, have some fun. When Disney supports this genocide. When you shouldn't be able to watch a video on your phone as you're waiting for your coffee at Starbucks. That shouldn't be something that you're, like, doing on a
that you're okay with.
That's called cognitive dissonance. We're doing something and believing something else. You need to align yourself with your thoughts and educate yourself and be present in everything that's going on in life.
Be intentional.
Yeah, I mean, everyone just tap into your humanity. You don't, you like Battuul is saying, you're seeing this. You could actively see this. It's so accessible. And I'd rather not drag my dead family members in front of you. I'd rather you just say, wow, you already exist. I mean, wow, there's maps of Palestine that are on National Geographics, pre-1948 maps of Palestine.
Yeah.
They believe the fake, lying, beheaded babies narrative. They believe that, but they won't believe the people in what's in front of their eyes.
There's actual,
I mean, come on, man. Come
on.
on.
Yeah, it is.
Are you that stupid? Like, really? I mean, I don't want to use ableist language, but like, sorry, man.
I feel that. No, but Yani, there's what can be done is your actual alignment with Palestinian ideas and thoughts. If Firas was saying, it's been documented. There's thoughts that you can tap into. There's music. There's culture. We're actually known for more than resisting against our oppressors. Well, we've been doing it for 75 years and we've gotten pretty damn good at it. It's not our thing. You know, we have so much greater achievements.
Yeah.
I mean,
our tatreed,
our music,
people, our food, our zaytun and zit, and
our love for one another. I don't think. I mean, I might be a Palestinian exceptionalist, but I haven't seen a people love more fiercely, love more passionately, more with so much like effort and thought.
Yeah.
I mean, oh man, I love my people so much, and I want you to. I want y'all to.
I once read that. I forgot who wrote this. It's like الحب مقاومة.
Exactly.
الحب مقاومة.
Our love
is resistance.
Is resistance.
100%.
Yes.
And resistance is self-love. Because it's survival and it's protecting myself. But we have to start thinking like, how do we thrive? Like we have to start thinking beyond survival. Like what's past survival? You know, how do we thrive?
I think something that's easy for everyone to do is share real stories.
Oh yeah.
Everyone's heard real story from real Palestinians on this table. Christian, Muslim, diaspora, grew up in Palestine, never went to Palestine until 2011 and 2008. I've been there twice in my life, but I am it. It's in.
You are.
I can't wait to return to that land.
You carry it with
I can't wait to return to that soil. That's my whole life's mission. So I mean, that if I'm telling you that. Like,
share that.
Yeah,
don't be afraid to be that
Let
one
people know.
person in the room that breaks the silence with, oh, Palestine. That's normal. I think it's unnatural for us to assume that we shouldn't be bringing this up.
And Zionists should be shunned. It's okay to shun Zionists. It really is. I don't care what charge they're going to throw at you. You know what I'm talking about. What that fake charge, that quote-unquote anti-Semitism. Like, you know, when Zionism is anti-Semitism, read by Joseph Mas'ad, by the way, you know, an academic wrote about this. Read from the founding fathers of Zionism itself to see for yourself that Zionism is a form of anti-Semitism, is anti-Semitism, basically. That Zionism is premised upon settler colonialism and elimination of the native. This is all these are the words of the founding fathers. So Zionists should be shunned. People who kill babies should be shunned. Yeah, and it's not our resistance. Our resistance is actually righteous. We don't have time we don't have the luxury, the privilege
of picking and choosing.
Exactly, of like targeting children. Our resistance is targeting mercenary armies, right? They're targeting tanks.
It's important to also say and realize that Palestinians consider all the settlers as illegal settlers.
Absolutely.
They're not supposed to be there.
And they're militarized.
And imagine from a Palestinian perspective, especially from someone from Gaza, like you guys, October 7th, imagine being in Gaza and just hearing loud ass fucking music in land that's yours. But you can't fucking leave this siege. This is a moral battle. They're literally like psychologically, it's like the fucking prison,
torture.
the prison experiment.
It's
what is it called?
The Stanford prison.
The Stanford prison experiment. Like they're putting them in this siege and they're telling them you can't leave. You have to live under these conditions. But we're gonna be right next door having a party right next to you in your land.
And they're militarized.
Yeah.
Half of them are. It's compulsory. Serving in the military is compulsory there.
So these are all illegal settlers. And when Hamas took the attack that day, it's, how can you say it's not reasonable? They've been bombed year after year, and now you're playing music right next to my fucking ear. Like, that's, like, I want you guys to realize the perspective of Palestinians at that time. And after that, everyone was like, oh, the Israeli citizens, the innocent Israelis were bombed. Like, there is no such thing as an innocent Israeli. In order for you to be Israeli, in order for you to live on that land, you have to have taken it from some other Palestinian. So you are complicit. You are someone who is complicit on this genocide.
And I think with the, with the importance of educating ourselves and educating others, a couple things come to mind. First is that this education needs to come from Palestinians. We're not going to seek education or affirmation from folks that have colonized us or from the so-called United States with its history that's filled with immoral acts and violence and genocide and ethnic cleansing. This is not a place where we would be seeking education about our own people. This is not a place that can tell us who's a terrorist and who's not. Also, it's important to educate ourselves about the Palestinians' thawabit, which thawabit is the Arabic word for constants or red lines. These are important principles that come down to, first of all, to have the right to resist the Israeli occupation and colonization of all Palestinians and Arab lands, the right of self-determination and liberation from the river to the sea. And when we say from the river to the sea, it means liberation. Because there has been recently, of all of Palestine, of all of historical Palestine, because there has been attempts to water from the river to the sea into a demand for equal rights. No, that's not what it means. It absolutely means full liberation of the land. It also means the right of return of all Palestinian refugees and their descendants. These are the Palestinian thawabit. These are the constants. Anyone that tries to water them down is not giving you the real important history and relevant education to Palestine. Anyone that tries to water down the thawabit, these constants, these principles, it's probably because they don't really believe in them. And for those that believe in full liberation, are the ones that are going to be principled about them and not water them down. But to also be educated about Palestine is to also mean that you have to be militant. This is something that the martyr Battuul Abdal mentioned. To be educated and not militant means that your education is completely useless.
And then with that being said, I want to say thank you to Shayna and Akshi for coming up to me and asking me to talk about this and allowing me and my comrades, my brothers and sisters, to talk about Palestine, and give us this space and this platform. To share our stories, to share our experiences, in diaspora, our experience being born back home. So I just want to say thank you again for Shayna and Akshi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shayna and Akshi, from all of us. Also, I do want to let everyone know that we will be linking some of our resources. So if you're interested in more knowledge, hopefully you are after this, you can find it in the description. Thank you guys. Thank you for enjoying us, and hopefully you guys felt the energy that we did. It was great. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.